Greetings, citizen volunteer. In case there is any fear in your heart, take with you this awesome
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
Puny, defenseless bipeds, ready to outsit eternity.
Can't be more than an hour, can it, Doctor?
50,000 years, 100,000. Time is immaterial.
Receding neural activity.
Your mind is beginning to work.
Please remain in contact with the biocryonic vibrations.
Here come the drums!
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the entire television canon, in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and Pete and I, a couple of journalists. We've covered Doctor Who many times in the past. We have been on this journey for years, many years, perhaps 10,000 of them at this stage. We're far into the future of our former selves on Pull to Open.
Don't start any dating controversies right now.
We've been doing this since 1980, or have we been doing it since 1975? Who knows?
Time can be rewritten.
It can.
Speaking of time, let's look back in time to where we have been recently. So many moons ago, I want to point out, we were at Revenge of the Cybermen and Genesis of the Daleks. We've done both of those, not necessarily in that order, but that will become very relevant in a minute. But let me catch you up on what we've done recently. 3 stories ago, we were back in ancient China with our buddy Marco Polo and our enemy Tagana and the TARDIS team, and it was super fun. It was super fun to go back to the very early days of the show and figure out creative ways to watch what is a fondly remembered missing episode. So that was good times.
Indeed.
We got in our caravan after that, and were then rocketed forward in time, but not that far forward, to the Unquiet Dead there in Victorian England. One of the episode from the first series of the new show, so a not too often visited era for the podcast. I think it's only our second Eggleston episode. Bit of a controversy on that visit. Back to last week's show to figure out our dating controversy on where we were supposed to go instead of the Unquiet Dead, but we went with it.
We're now cursed. We're cursed until we get to curse the black spot.
We are very cursed, but in keeping with the pirate destiny, our ultimate pirate destiny, last time we were at the second segment of the Key to Time era, which is, of course, the Pirate Planet, written by Douglas Adams, famously, and a delightful visit to the planet Zanuck.
It really was. And then
we
rocketed back again in time.
Yeah, but forward, far into the future, we have arrived at Season 12, Serial 2, The Ark in Space.
That's right. We're on Nerva Station.
Right. It's not a beacon yet. Or no, it was formerly a beacon. Yeah. Excuse me. It's timey-wimey, Doctor Who.
It was a beacon, and then they brought the management consultants in. They said, no, you need to rebrand as Nerva Station. I like that you brought up Revenge of the Cybermen and Genesis of the Daleks at the beginning. It makes me feel of sort of like those previously on, things at the start of a show. They sort of cut together, and you kind of tell what's in the episode from what they're highlighting in the previously on. Revenge of the Cybermen. Cut in some footage from that. Genesis of the Daleks. We're right there. We're right in it. We're in the TARDIS Light season.
Yeah, we're really filling out this season 1 of Tom Baker. This is only the second story of his entire run, The Ark in Space. Yes. And it's notably the first trip in the TARDIS for Harry Sullivan. So it's kind of like trying out this group, right? It's the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry, and they're going on adventures.
We have been talking about, the 3-person TARDIS team as being ideal, or rather Doctor and 2 companions. And here we are at another example.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it also works.
So guys, if you're here for the commentary on the Ark in Space, then feel free to go ahead and check the show notes right now, and you will be able to find the exact time code on when that commentary begins. It always begins with our summary of the plot, a little segment we like to call TLDW, where one of us summarizes the story in record time. But before we go do that, we're going to dive into what we like to call the pull to open feedback loop.
That's
and
right.
Chris has a little something to say about that.
We're taking a side trip and a transmat into the feedback loop, changing clothes in order to do so. But listen, folks, one of the best ways to show that you love Pull to Open is to leave a review in the podcast app you're using, especially if you're using Apple Podcasts. No judgment if you're not, but reviews, especially 5-star reviews, will make the show visible to more listeners now and 10,000 years in the future. The listeners eager for great discussion of Doctor Who, which this absolutely is, I have to say. The only way to better show your appreciation for the show is to share the podcast with a friend. Even if the friend doesn't know anything about Doctor Who, just plunge them in at the deep end with this podcast. We like to be welcoming to beginners. We like to be welcoming to new Who viewers and old Who viewers alike. We want to unite the tribes. We want to introduce the old show to the fans of the new show. We're doing a lot of stuff here on various platforms. Perhaps more platforms than you can shake a large green dead insect husk at.
And one of those platforms is, in fact, Spotify.
Yeah.
So, hey there, Spotify listeners.
Insect husks. Sorry.
It's green. It's definitely green. I'm talking to you, Spotify listeners. Yes, there are even more ways for you to interact with the show. Of course, you can rate the show in your mobile app, but also each and every week, Chris and I, as you know, give a rating or pull to open rating for the story we're talking about. And you too can give a rating if you're listening on Spotify. So just go to that episode page in your app and tell us if you thought it was a Dalek, Ogron, Viscount Banger, Fixed Point in Time. I know I'm forgetting at least one of them, but you can have your say on what you thought of that story. And hey, isn't that reason enough? Even if you're listening on Apple or Stitch or whatever, go ahead and download Spotify. And now you can also have your say on our ratings. And we will always circle back after a certain amount of time to give you some results. And I'm going to do that now because we have some for the Unquiet Dead. So the count on the Unquiet Dead, if you recall, well, our ratings, first of all, like we were both very pleased to go back to the Unquiet Dead and found it a better experience than when we watched it the first time all the way back in 2005. And we both gave it a Dalek. And I think you even said it's probably one of the better Daleks. I forget if you said it was like a Dalek Emperor or just a shiny Dalek.
Super shiny, polished brass Victorian Dalek there. It was pretty good. I was definitely tempted to give it a banger, as were 25% of you gave into the temptation to give it a banger. Our best of the best rating. So, yeah, clearly big Unquiet Dead fandom out there. They're not being quiet about it.
Yeah, and the Dalek rating is still well ahead, so it's at about 60% of the vote. Called it a Dalek, so we were very aligned with the fans. About 17 or so % of the folks rated it a Professor Hater, which of course means it's not so great an episode, but at least they learned something. But nobody called it an Ogron, and there was 0 for Fixed Point in Time as well. So definitely, I think this is kind of what you would see. Actually, I don't think you would have seen this several years ago. I think you probably would have got Dalek, Professor Hater more, but I think now it's more Dalek Banger. Upon reflection.
It really is, and I do want to watch it again at some point in the future and maybe revisit that rating, because maybe with the more passage of time, Eccleston plus Callow, just some fine acting in that episode, so maybe it will take a little bit longer to marinate into a banger.
You know what I've never done? I've actually never watched that episode at Christmas. I should try that because it is basically the first Christmas episode of the new series.
Throw it into the Christmas mix. We should. It's sort of it's the Die Hard of Doctor Who. It's the thing you forget.
Is it a Christmas episode?
It's a Christmas movie. Well, moving on from Spotify. Thank you for Spotify voters. Everyone else, please go vote. On YouTube, we are youtube.com/pull-to-open. You can see us. Hi, YouTubers. And all of our Easter eggs in the background. Pete, you've got a Cybermen this week. I guess that's a Nerva Station reference.
A little bit. Nerva's bringing me back in the cyber mood, but I realized I have so many Doctor Who hardcovers too, and I never pull them out for anything. And since this is a classic show, I wanted to get some of these ones I got from the 80s. I don't really have any books and stuff from the 70s, which would be more appropriate for the Ark in Space, but I wanted to pull these out because I just don't pull them out that often.
You don't have the Ian Marta novelization.
I don't. I think I did a while back.
Yeah.
My sister inherited most of my Target books, though.
Pretty wild that he wrote that. Anyway, if you are watching on YouTube, here is your reminder. Please like the video that you're watching right now. I'm going to point to where the like button is. Right there. Hit it now. And subscribe and smash that bell icon if you want to get transmatted somewhere else. Or if you want notifications for whenever we post something new. And one other place where you don't need notifications, or you might want notifications, but where the videos are much shorter is, what is it, Pete?
It is TikTok, our most active social network. We post short videos there all the time. We are at Pull to Open, all one word, on TikTok. We get lots of great comments, reach lots of people through the app. And we often like to highlight a comment of the week, which I'd like to do here. So this is from Joe Rep, friend of the pod. And he's commenting on one of our videos on the Unquiet Dead and Eccleston's performance and how he is essentially sort of lecturing Rose a bit on her polite morality and that the Gelth in that episode are going to occupy some dead bodies, and this is before they realize that the Gelth are evil. And he's thinking, oh, this is just like recycling. It'll be fine. They inhabit bodies, and that's just what we're going to have to get used to. And Joe observes that I think this hints at some of the horrors of the Time War we don't really get to see. The dead getting possessed? Tuesday. Perfectly fine to him. Which... yeah, I think that's true. I mean, this is all, Eccleston's Doctor was very unique in many ways, and I think part of it is performance. He's just such a good actor to play both the humor and the darkness. He just really brings both out really, really well, and that was very evident in this episode. But also Russell
some things, man. He's seen some things. Yeah.
But also I'd say Russell T. Davies was writing the Doctor in a very conscious way that he's wounded and fresh from the Time War. He was, was obviously peeling back those layers of mystery during Series 1, and just the jibing of that writing with Eccleston's performance was just pitch perfect through most of that season. So, but yeah, totally. I think that this read as to why Eccleston's just so, that Doctor is ready to lash out at Rose for getting upset about something that he's just kind of whatever. I've just, I've seen some crazy stuff in this Time War. Don't get upset about this.
And at this point, everyone, Eccleston and RTD included, thinks that it is actually his regeneration that's been through the Time War, right? We would not get the resurrected War Doctor for many years. So, yes, thank you, Joe. Thank you to everyone on TikTok for making it our most active network. We are still posting short videos all the time there, so please go check them out. And also, while you're at it, why not just max out your phone, fire up Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and follow us on all of them at Pull to Open 63. All of them? Yes, all of them. And drop us a line there, or wherever you want to reach us through your favorite social network. And that is the end of the feedback loop. And Pete, we have done it in 9 minutes.
9 minutes. In 9 minutes. Look at that.
We were talking before the show. We do. We hear ourselves every week. We listen to the show every week, and it does sort of feel like the feedback loop can stretch on a bit too long. And we do like to note it in the show notes when the feedback loop ends. But also, we can squish it a bit. We can play with time here.
Well, especially if we don't have a Humoji challenge.
That's
it's easier to get through. So. We still need to reload a few more of those emoji titles. We got a couple in on some comments. I haven't compiled them yet. So the Humoji challenge is coming back, guys. But we could definitely use some more fuel for it. So feel free to leave us a Doctor Who story title in the form of an emoji on any of the networks that we just mentioned.
And I'll just add to that by saying don't. Please do not leave a Doctor Who story title in the form of emoji, because people use it to torture me. and I will agonize over it. And you
That's
definitely
why
don't
I
want to see that.
created the podcast in the first place.
You don't want to see that. Seriously, why would you want to see me suffer? What is it? What is it about you people, you monsters? Anyway, no. Love you humans. So yes, is there other business? There is. We have a returning companion.
Speaking of humans we love.
Yeah, well, maybe not so much, but
Bonnie Langford's a lovely person, and
Bonnie
she is
Langford.
back. She's back in the show for season, well, I guess it's series 14 with Ncuti Gatwa, and she'll be back as Mel. And she obviously did her cameo at the end of The Power of the Doctor, which brought a host of questions, which it now looks like we're going to get answered. Because Mel, as any Doctor Who fan knows, says goodbye to the Doctor at the end of Dragonfire to go party with Sabalom Glitz, seemingly somewhere in the future. And how is she then back on Earth to take part in the companion support group or whatever it is at the end of Power of the Doctor? How did she get back? What happened to Glitz? What's she been doing? And Russell T Davies, of course, biggest Doctor Who nerd there is very aware of those questions. He's acknowledged them in what he shared out, I believe, on Instagram, and looks like there's going to be some stuff there. And I'm betting, Chris, he's going to be dealing with what you call the Mel moment.
Oh, please. Yes, long-time listeners know that if you listen to the Rage Quitting episode, which I do recommend, I think that's one of our better short trips, we talked about the fact that I rage quit Doctor Who when Mel arrived. Well, when we had the horrible Baker to McCoy regeneration, that was the moment that I rage quit. But the moment of being prepared for by Mel's arrival, weird arrival, Watcher-like in Trial of a Time Lord, where it's sort of like it isn't explained how she joins the TARDIS or how the Doctor is seeing a vision from his, or presenting a story from his future with her in it, and then she just sort of shows up, and that did not sit well with teenage me. So yes, please, RTD, if you're bringing Mel back, please address that issue. I do love that RTD is really just leaning into the what I'll call his "what but how" comments, which he's also said about whoever Jonathan Groff is playing. Jonathan Groff is ... what? No, but how? Which I love. Suggests more to reveal there. But yeah, he really knows how to tickle our taste buds.
Yeah, so I have a lot to say about Mel and her history with the Doctor, but I'll probably save that for a Terror of the Vervoids podcast because it's most relevant there. But I just say that, like, I'm pretty excited about this because I really like what Bonnie Langford has done in the Big Finish audios. I think the I haven't listened to a lot of them with her, but in particular, she's done some really memorable ones like The One Doctor. And there's another one that I forget the name of it. I think it's called Black White or something, but it's that's a very timey-wimey one. So she's gotten some really rich material since. And I like that she's leaned into Mel's, I think, smarter. She's supposed to be smarter than she's often written on screen. She seems a little goofy, and they do some silly stuff like the swimming pool thing on Paradise Towers. But I think she's been much better treated in the audios, and I would love to see a version of that Mel come to life on screen. It looks like we might get it because it's like she has the I joked about this on our Twitter feed. She has that line "megabyte modem," which is one of the most infamous lines in Doctor Who when she sort of shouts it, I think, in The Ultimate Foe.
I did not know this.
But she was the character is supposed to be like a computer programmer. Like she's supposed to be kind of a smart, nerdy person. So let's see more of that. Let's lean into Mel being kind of fun, smart, and like on the job.
I think I erased all memory of Mel and who or what she was from my Matrix. There's a big old gap there when I look, but I'm going to say something which I never thought I'd say, which I hope we go to more Mel stories before the 60th anniversary rolls around, before the next season begins, because yes, I would like to see more about it. I've not seen Dragonfire. I did not know how she left So because that
Spoiler alert.
purely, that's
Sorry.
I love spoilers. I love spoilers. It's all good. I'm the anti-River in that sense. But yeah, that's it. This is new territory from this unknown territory. It's part of the joy of Pull to Open is that basically Peter's seen a lot more of Doctor Who than I have. And I'm sort of an old school fan, probably at this stage more of a new Who fan. But I still, am enjoying the opportunity to go, one story at a time, 1 week at a time through old Doctor Who. And if I may just talk for the next 20 minutes about the difference between old and new Doctor Who.
Hey, no. Hey, wow, we got to get on to some of this
sapiens. Yes.
classic stuff that you purport to be enjoying. That's something we need to get going on. Guys, it's time to begin talking about the arc in space. And as we do every week, we begin our commentary with a record short plot summary done entirely from memory from one of us. And this time it is one Christopher Taylor who will be taking us through the arc in space in 2 minutes. Are you ready, sir?
No, but I think I've got this. I think I got it. It might break down a little bit at the end. If I start to struggle, you might see a green hand arise with bubble wrap on it, and I'll just sort of stare and go, no!
Well, Doctor Who fans, it's well known, have a race memory that you can tap into. And so if you can get into that zone, you will be able to get every single plot point of this episode in record time. I'm very confident about that.
Let me tap into Dune's memories. Whatever Dune was.
Well, they would end right before this one, but we got to begin now.
Okay.
The official Pull to Open summary of the arc in space begins in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so it's Nerva Station. It's in the future, and we see something coming in from the outside, and it goes into one of the cryogenic tanks and into someone's head. What's going on? We don't know. But then the Doctor, Harry, and Sarah arrive, and they're figuring it out. They realize they're in the far future. Doc thinks maybe 30th century. No, it's like thousands of years beyond that. And there have been solar flares, and everyone on Earth has had flea, and they're cryogenically stored in the station. But Sarah gets cryogenically frozen because she gets broken up from the group, and they have to try to save her. And there's an Autobot that's sort of shooting at the Doctor and Harry that they overcome. They get Sarah out, but then also someone else called Vira wakes up, and she wakes up the leader of the ship, who they jokingly call Noah. But Noah, when he's investigating the engines, he's finds out that he turns into a Wyrn. And they're these insect species that go around and basically infect humans, and they want to take over humans because humans have taken over their land in Andromeda, and now they're going to assume all of the knowledge of humanity, and they're super physics, and they're going to be super powerful, and they're going to invade everything and take everyone's life. So they have to figure out how are they going to defeat the Wyrn altogether, including Noah, who's basically leading the Wyrn at this point. They basically, through a bunch of tricks and electricity and the Doctor seeing into the Wyrn's brain, they get them all into the shuttlecraft. And then the shuttlecraft takes off, and then basically it blows up, and it turns out that Noah was basically on their side all along, and then they transmat down to Earth in new clothes, and don't know they're about to deal with some Sontarans.
And time. Wow. You came in just like with a second to spare there. That never happens. When is the last time that has happened on TLDW?
I was like, what have I missed out here? Should I mention Rogan? Should I mention whoever the other dude is?
Mention the larvae? The Queen. Did you mention the Queen falling out of the closet and stuff like that?
I should have mentioned Harry finding the Queen in a cupboard. Who among us has not opened a cupboard that they've not opened in ages and found a giant green insect falling out on them? Heard that Doctor Who cliffhanger music.
It's so clearly falling too. I remember when I was watching this with my daughter, and she basically called it. Like, we were like, whoa, that was crazy. That wasn't like, because they're looking for some oxygen or resuscitator or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's not a resuscitator. And she was like, yeah, it looks like it was falling down. And I was like, yeah, it did.
But that's the thing about old Who special effects, right? You can't tell, is it falling or is it supposed to be attacking? You don't know. You don't know.
That's
Either
true.
The next episode could open with Harry going, oh, it's all right, it's just a stiff corpse, it's dead. Or it could open with Harry sort of like wrestling this clearly inanimate object, and trying to like throw it over. Oh, no. Oof. And the Doctor saves him. So
I think you had you had pretty much the story, and it's interesting coming here because we just did the Pirate Planet, and not to get too into the why the randomizer brought us here. I think there's a bunch of reasons, but this is a comparatively straightforward plot and story. So, your chances of TLDW were probably a little higher for that one, for that reason.
Given that the whole first episode is just the Doctor, Harry, and Sarah.
Right,
which is very, very rare up until this point in Classic Who. I don't believe you have to go back to the Troughton era to find an episode that's just the Doctor and his companions. No, that's true. They're just kind of wandering around and slowly encountering automated systems and unraveling some kind of mystery. So it's an interesting structure. For this particular story, there's a few other things to note about it. It's all done on video because there's no location filming for this at all. So it was all studio. These are the same sets that they end up reusing in Revenge of the Cybermen, and they did that deliberately to save some money and say like, okay, we'll just have a story go back to the same space station. But although this sets off strangely some weird dating controversies, even though they do a decent job of explaining the time zones here, they're kind of forgotten, missed, and mistakes were made later. And when people refer back to this episode and just completely get the period wrong, because they actually talk about multiple different periods. So that's funny. This is the first story produced by Philip Hinchcliffe, actually. He didn't produce Robot. That was actually done by Barry Letts, which I assume was his last one. And so it seems so weird because, of course, Robot was the first episode of Tom Baker's first season, or the first story of the first season of Tom Baker, and this is the last time that you had this weird situation of like a producer carrying over from the previous Doctor to like the first story of the new season. That would never happen again, and just seems a bit weird, but yeah,
definitely. It's like in Modern Who, obviously there's the whole concept of a showrunner, and so that sort of thing would kind of never happen. Back then, I feel like the producer role was sort of slowly evolving into showrunner, and I think you could make a very strong case that after Hinchcliffe started that, maybe not started it, but like John Nathan Turner, I think is maybe more properly thought of as the showrunner of Doctor Who than the producer. But because by that point, he was the guy. He was making all the calls.
Certainly, the Hinchcliffe era is the first one that we sort of think of as having a definite feel to it, right? I mean, you could say maybe the Barry Letts era we think of as being like, it's more ecological, it's more Green Death, it's more Inferno, right? It's more, we care about what's happening to the planet and it's getting screwed, and here's John Pertwee investigating that fact in a lot of ways. With Hinchcliffe, it's horror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And so he's like right out of the gate, he's sort of establishing that horror tone and sort of more adult theme. And I whether it's he thinks it's better or if he thinks it's a good way to expand the audience, I mean, it sort of does both.
Yeah, he's definitely trying to expand the audience to a more adult audience. He did famously cut a scene from this that I think everyone now agrees, including the actor who plays Noah, agrees that this would have been better off in. But it's basically, there is a scene where Noah tells Vira, who I didn't mention that they were pair bonded, they're basically a future version of husband and wife. There's a scene where he begs her to kill him.
Yeah.
Because
that was cut,
it was cut, and he's having a hard time. And I actually had to dig down deep to find out what the dialogue was in that scene. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because he talks about burning fire, life, ecstasy, at which I thought, is being a Wurin like going to Burning Man? Is that basically the experience he's having? But yeah,
definitely plenty of ecstasy. Yeah,
burning fire, life, ecstasy, man, kill me.
I'm surprised they cut it just because I feel like death is always a thing in Doctor Who. Right. And I guess I'd put it to the fans, but surely there's been some point prior to this episode where some character has asked to be killed. Has that not happened in the show at this point? Was that just deemed off limits? Because I feel like things in Inferno and other places are borderline, at least.
Yeah. It is weird. Maybe it's the fact that he also throws a gun at her feet. He's like, "Kill me," and here's the weapon. But yeah, it is a shame because Noah is the thinnest character in this.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of just doesn't go... He almost doesn't fit in this story, right? Because we've just been told that the human race is here, or like the chosen descendants of the human race are here. And the Doctor's like, oh, look, all colors, all creeds. By the way, we should say that Vira was in the original script supposed to be from Haiti. She's supposed to be Haitian, and there's a really missed opportunity for diverse casting, given that the cast is entirely white. But yeah, all colors, all creeds, really. And then Noah wakes up and he's all like, who are these people? Like, they're going to pollute our genetic pool.
Yeah.
Really? Did you? Really, Grandpa? Grandpa Eugenics? Did you not just hear this thing about all colors and creeds?
I know. Well, it's like, one of the things that I like as a fan that is seeing some of the themes and even the details of this episode reflected in Smile in New Who.
Yes.
So that was like the first people revived here are called medtechs, and if you catch it in Smile when they encounter that guy revived in the hallway, he says, "I'm medtech 1." And there, to your point about the diversity, they seem to make up for that in Smile, and that guy's clearly not white. Like he's so there's the Doctor Who kind of learns from itself, even though it's funny that we talked about Smile at the time. There's a dating controversy around that show too. It seems like they can't do a far future colony ship full of humans without it being there's just so much continuity in Doctor Who now. It'd be impossible for it not to be a controversy.
Rule number 2: the Doctor is terrible at chronology. He needed a second one of those 500-year diaries. I think that's his problem. He just stopped noting everything down. Yeah, it's so we shouldn't go much further without saying that for new fans who are wondering about the Ark in Space, maybe they've heard about it. It is sort of one of the most mentioned stories of the classic era. Both RTD and Moffat have said that it is their favorite. Their absolute favorite, bar none, of the classic serials. And Moffat in particular wanted to reference it. That's why I believe this is true, Pete. We have a bingo on, solar flare human diaspora stories. Oh. Because we have this, we have Smile, as you mentioned, in the Capaldi era, and we have The Beast Below.
Right.
Which was Starship UK, which was also fleeing the solar flares, which was also, by the way, all colors and creeds.
And the main thing I was thinking about in the dating controversy, because The Beast Below basically pinpoints the solar flares at the 30th century, when here they explicitly say it's not. Even though the station was made in the 30th century, the solar flares were long after that. And on top of that, the Ark has been in space for 10,000 years.
Yes, I do love that there's a moment where the Doctor turns to Harry. He's like, what do you think, 29th, 30th century? As if Harry's going to have the slightest clue what he's talking about. Harry.
Did you catch that the first line is the Doctor calling Harry an idiot?
Yes. And of course, in Revenge of the Cybermen, we have the famous Harry Sullivan is an imbecile. Tom Baker yelling at the top of his voice. But
referred back to in the Zygon inversion. And it's like unanimous. It's like unanimous. The doctors are unanimous that Harry's not too bright.
I mean, the Doctor does tend to denigrate the intelligence of his male companions. That's kind of a thing. Which, we could get into the reasons for that. But yeah, this is Harry's first real adventure, and it's a really good one for him. Like, you gotta say, this is top-notch Harry content. He's really compelling. He is super old school. He keeps calling Sarah Jane old girl.
Right.
She threatens to spit in his eye for doing so at one point, and then fails to do so. When he does so, I counted it twice more. In the script, he calls her old girl. There is no eye spitting.
He gets to be a doctor. Like, that's good.
Yes, that's
like
right.
He actually,
he's only qualified to work on sailors, as the Doctor points out. Way to denigrate him in front of meeting the new person. Seriously. When he meets Varro for the first time, it's like, oh, I'm afraid my doctorate is only honorary. And Harry here is only qualified to work on sailors.
Yeah. He gets to do things with the Doctor. So Sarah gets peeled off early and into the room, and there's no air. And this is kind of a device they use a lot. I mean, it's not like it's not used in other eras, but in this particular season, it just happens many times that they get the plot going by Sarah getting in trouble. And in this case, she's suffocating later at this same location, Nerva Beacon. She gets poisoned by the Cybermats, and this sparks all kinds of plot going on. She's definitely got grounds for workplace lawsuit here. I think Nerva's not a great place for her. Yeah, it's not a particularly great story for Sarah Jane. Harry's a bit sort of a old duffer in a sense of being sexist about her, and even sort of gives her sort of a nudge when they hear a voice from the High Minister of Earth, who turns out to be a woman, and Harry's like, hey, how about that, old girl? She's the leader of the world, member of the fairer sex. Good one for you. Which is England's had queens, Harry. What? Can you imagine a woman being in charge? What have you picked up a history book? I mean, dude.
I know. And also it's good for you, Sarah Jane. Well, why isn't it good for you, Harry? Are you not a feminist? It's 1975, or is it 1980? Yes, we don't know. But either way, get with the program, dude. But the Doctor is almost more sexist. And I'm not just talking about, there's that scene at the end where Sarah Jane has to clamber through a ventilation shaft, basically. It's a very Die Hard kind of scene. Second mention of Die Hard, pull to open. But he sort of encourages her by insulting her, talking about what a useless girl she is. The word girl gets tossed around an awful lot in this story. And then it turns out, he was only he knew her indomitable spirit would win through, and she gets through at the other end because he's insulting her. But it's not that. It's the fact that he's several times he says, "Not now, Sarah Jane," where she's got, and that's one of the reasons why they don't notice she's gone missing.
Yeah,
he's like, run along, dear. The grown-ups are thinking. It's not great for the Doctor's sexism.
Yeah. Like you say, it's not great for her character, those moments. And on addition to that, I mentioned her getting suffocating and getting things going and needing help. But then she gets transmatted away and put into the cryogenic pod or whatever, which again, she's just kind of blundering her way through this station, which is sort of giving them the impetus to follow her around and figure out what's gone wrong here. By the way, this isn't just a knock on Sarah. Did it just seem like to you nobody was noticing the green slime trail from one of the it's just so obvious on the set from the pod to the ventilation grill, and you're just like, why is no one talking about the green slime trail, and why is no one checking that particular pod? It seemed like there was a weird sort of dramatic irony going on there that the set guy wasn't really talking to the script guy, and it's like this super clean environment. It's totally white. You would notice anything that was out of the ordinary. You notice a piece of lint on that floor, and there's this massive goop all over. It's like, why isn't that the first thing they're looking at?
That is, you've hit upon a point that is the first thing you notice about this visually. Which is that it is so bright in there. It's maybe the brightest lit space station in all of TV history. And it's certainly, it's often said that this story influenced Alien, which was written a couple of years later. Although I don't think that the timing lines up. I believe Dan O'Brien was writing Alien when this was already on. So, a lot of layers of what I'll call fan crud have kind of built up around this story over the years. And I think that's one of them, this notion that even Moffat has repeated that, like, they stole the plot for Alien. But, let's say that were true. It's sort of basically Alien decided to do this and then said, hey, what about if we did this with less lighting? And like every
really scary.
Yes, exactly. Every iteration of it since has been like, things are scarier when there's less lighting. I mean, a lot of people found this scary. I think if they watched it as kids, certainly you kind of find it a bit scary. But the lighting doesn't really work to me.
I'll say, the Wirren are conceptually terrifying. How they're talked about and what they do. I would definitely say this is inferior to Alien for for a few reasons. One of them is the one you just said, which is that, once the Wirren are physically there, they're kind of on camera a little too much to be scary, right? You kind of need them. This is the thing Alien and other, great horror concepts do. You never quite show the monster, at least not until the end, or have a concept like the Weeping Angels, where it's either you see them in plain view, but that's not what's scary about them, right? So there's that thing that's like, basically it's not, and again, it's 1970s Doctor Who. I'm not expecting a ton, but it is like I think they just overused the Wirren costumes because they had them and they were like, we have to show the monster, and it's like keeping it out of sight more would have been a better choice.
Yes, the bubble wrap is a bit overused, and
the bubble wrap too.
Cliffhanger where Noah looks at his hand and it's turning green, and we are 4 years on from Inferno, which also had people's hands turning green. There, they seem to use a bit of watercolor paint. Dabbed onto the hand.
Well, which was scarier, I would say.
Yes, it was.
Like seeing that dark green spreading across a hand.
Yeah.
And having it go more and more in every shot and maybe some hairs coming out. That's scarier than the bubble wrap.
This is so clearly bubble wrap. I don't know if enough people would have seen bubble wrap in 1975 to
it could be something like that.
Register as weird and alien. But certainly when the cliffhanger is like zooming in on the bubble wrap and you're like, it's bubble wrap. So it does, unfortunately, it has not aged well. The special effects are particularly bad in this one. It's kind of unfortunate.
I will say the guy who does Noah, even though the character's thin, and I don't think he's the only one who has a thin character. I think most of the guest cast aren't really fleshed out. But I think he does a good job when he is clearly struggling with himself, when he's like sort of looking at his hand and he starts slamming it, like he's clearly at war with himself, thinking that should I tell them, should I not, should I, like, what do I do here, because I'm clearly sort of like figuring out that this is some kind of irreversible thing that has infected him and affected his mind. So that's kind of good body horror there. It's better than him in the hallway just kind of like being Hunchback of Notre Dame with the green bubble wrap around. I thought that was a little just didn't look good. Again, it's super well lit and you can tell it's just prosthetics that have been put on him. His hand's a little more weirdly deformed when he's more taken over, so that's kind of good. It's just become a stub as his face is changing and all this stuff. So that's his okay.
Face changes. That's a little bit scary. Yeah. We should. I mean, so that, first of all, to viewers of the time, that would totally read as a ripoff of the Quatermass Experiment, which was a BBC series, I believe, 50s and 60s, which also has a cliffhanger where the scientist looks at his hand and it's turning alien. Right. So it's kind of a trope even at this stage. Probably it also feels, and I've not seen this reference anywhere else, but it feels influenced by the movie Silent Running,
Okay.
which was kind of about an ark in space that's ordered to return to Earth. So you can see the join here. So let's talk about the circumstances behind the scenes of this story. So it's written by Bob Holmes, but here is another reason for the randomizer to bring us here. The original version was written by John Lucarotti,
Right.
of Marco Polo fame, who hadn't written for the series since 1965. And I just love the fact, especially with a name like John Lucarotti, that he was writing this on a boat in the south of France, near Corsica, and there was a postal strike. So he's like sending these episodes in. There's no communication between him and Bob Holmes, the new script editor, because of the postal strike. He's basically incommunicado, which is kind of a baller move for a writer. I'm considering relocating to a boat off Corsica.
You couldn't just fax it in those days.
yeah, that's right. Couldn't fax it. Had to mail it. And so Bob Holmes decides it's unworkable. He actually decides it's a bit too complex and smart for the Doctor Who audience, which is kind of
wow. Well, there's another like echo of the Pirate Planet, or opposite rather.
Right.
If this is too complex, holy cow.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, it's Bob Holmes at the beginning of his tenure as script editor. He's just taken over from Terrence Dix, and who was the one who actually mentioned Lucarotti to him, recommended Lucarotti to him. So Bob Holmes has to rewrite this from scratch in 18 days. And given that, it's a pretty good script for something you just write in 18 days. And there are a lot of Holmes is really good at like the, characterization and a few lines. He's got almost Moffat-y dialogue. There's a lot of stuff where you're just like, wow, this is New Who, where he talks about, there's a line where the Doctor says to Harry, "Oh, Harry, your mind is beginning to work. Entirely due to my influence, of course. You mustn't take any credit." You can really imagine Moffat coming out with that. Similarly, where the Doctor gets stunned by a stun gun by Noah at one point, and he wakes up and he says, "Shot me, did he?" In mid-sentence. I might have been saying something important. I was saying something important. Which is, yes, I love it. So a lot of good dialogue moments,
but mostly the regular cast.
Yes.
Both of those you cited were the Doctor's lines, and again, feeding your new Doctor good lines. I think that's definitely job one of the script editor and
for sure,
whatever you're trying to do.
For sure. He does like his big words, does Bob Holmes. There are a lot of big words in here. There is one, I'm going to say, unfortunately, that he misuses, where the unless he's saying like unless it's the whole thing about future speech has sort of evolved to the point where they can barely understand each other, and obviously the TARDIS translation circuit is taking the day off here because there's a lot of I don't understand your speech, old person from thousands of years ago, but also like there's a point where Sarah is getting irradiated, and first of all, why would you irradiate someone to cryogenically store them? I don't get how that works. But the
irradiated
voice
with what exactly? I guess radiation.
But there's a voice that tells Sarah there's going to be a 2-minute interregnum, which is, I think Bob Holmes been looking a bit too far in his thesaurus there, because interregnum is literally just the gap between reigns of monarchs. You can't really use it in any other context, and why would it change in the future? But I have to give him props. There's a lot of sort of uncompromisingly long and unusual words in this, and he did manage to teach me the word condign.
Condign? When was that used?
Condign, where Vira is woken, and she says that Noah will take condign action, which means, like legally appropriate, fitting, an eye for an eye would be a condign punishment in theory.
Gotcha.
Let the punishment suit the crime. So that's good. And also, if you're an entomologist, you're going to notice that Bob Holmes is, full of his entomology words here.
Yeah.
About, the
endoparasitism.
Endoparasitism, yes. There's a thing about the the insect is going to reach its imago. I forget how you pronounce it, but that is the word for the final form that an insect reaches, which the whirring are about to reach. But I do have to say, I like the original Lucarotti idea better, which was not that it was insects, but it was mushroom spores.
Okay.
Now that feels a lot more 21st century to me. That feels a lot more ahead of its time, because we have like The Last of Us, a lot of modern zombie horror sort of based on mushroom spores. It is sort of we have the concept of the mycelial network, which Star Trek Discovery got into. Yeah, it's a real thing. So this notion of like mushroom spores going through space. That said, one of the cheap effects, which I do love better than the bubble wrap, is where basically the whirring is pupating, I guess, and it's basically a guy in a green sleeping bag,
right,
kind of inching forward, but does actually look kind of scary. Kind of cool.
Those inhuman moments.
There's a point where they look like tardigrades.
Right.
The water bears that can actually survive in space. So that's ahead of its time there. I like that too.
Yeah, let's sort of jump into the weird a little bit, because honestly, like maybe I'm the only one, but I feel like I don't fully get how they do what they're doing. So, and I think part of this is, they were a little bit sloppy, but part of it is that like their abilities sort of change throughout, right? So like the queen arrives, she lays her eggs in the dude in the pod, I guess, but it's kind of like she's dying already from the electricity. So this is a last ditch thing she's doing, yet she has time to sort of wander around, cut the cables, open the pod, and then lay the egg. Like, I guess do something. I guess they couldn't be graphic with it, but it's like, I guess that's what happens, right? And so he's going to become a Weirin, but then this isn't really a problem with their abilities, but then she just sort of goes to a closet and locks herself in and dies. Right. And or closes the door anyway. Like that. There's zero reason for that. And she's like, okay, I got to get ready for that jump scare in a few years. And so that's fine. But then they actually say the queen's been dead for years in there. But is that how long it takes the eggs to gestate? Because it seems like that Dune guy just got out, because they see it wandering around, like gunking her up in the station, right? It's just newly wandering around. So why did that take so long? Maybe that's just the gestation period. But then within hours, you have a whole bunch of Weirin. So I guess it's you have to headcanon a lot of this. I guess it's like the solar collectors, I think, is where he goes, right? And that's where they start to gestate. So through that accelerates the process, and then there's a whole bunch of Weirin, and they all have Dune's knowledge. And then who or what exactly infects Noah? You never quite see it. Is it one of these larva things that we've seen inching around, or is it an adult from the thing? Like, in other words, like I don't get quite what's going on. Like, why didn't Dune become an adult? And if not, like what? How did it lay all these eggs? I guess they just sort of all came out, and there's all these pods. I don't know. There's just not quite enough there for me to fully wrap my head around. Like, you look at Alien, right? Like, oh, very clear. Like, what happens? The egg gets inside, bursts out, becomes adult, etc. And then later you find out about queens and stuff, and now where the eggs come from. But here it was a little like, okay. And the whole thing where and my bigger pick is that it's a bit of a stretch to think that Noah would get gunked and then have no time to even raise the alarm. Like, he's just instantly, from just one touch, he falls down and starts becoming a Weirin. That just doesn't seem like, it just seems a little too easy.
You know what this episode really needs, coming straight here from Douglas Adams' episode, is you almost want to cut at some point to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has a lot to say on the subject of Weirin. And we just get a kind of a little amusing animated segment about the life cycle and how it actually works. Would have made it a lot clearer what's going on here. Yeah, would it have been better as mushroom spores? I kind of think so. It is a bit of an issue here.
Well, the thing about bugs, though, I like bugs being the bad guys because we're all creeped out by bugs. It's just hardwired into humans. Like everybody is like, and then when they become life size, it's like there's some people who can't even watch creature features with big bugs because they're just so terrifying to them.
Yeah. How did your kids react to the bug stuff?
Yeah, they were fine. Especially like Grace, I was a little worried she might be scared, but no, she was fine. I think it's partly the effects, and partly the sort of weird. The high concept of it was not as not as graphic as it was, but it was a little, again, unclear quite what their abilities are because they seemed like they were making it up as they went along. So I think they were fine with it. So, yeah, I mean, I think, again, the Weirin, I don't want to knock them too much because I do think they work pretty well as a monster. It's too bad that they never really get, the adults anyway, never really get a good horror moment where you're just like, ugh, like they really sort of, not necessarily graphically kill a guy, but get your imagination going on what they could do to someone because they have these big mandibles and, like there's the body horror stuff, but then there's no like full, like straight up horror stuff.
We needed more ooze. We needed more slime. We needed it to be, I think, a little bit more fluid than it was. We needed the Weirin to be fluid. They also needed to buy another vowel, I think. It's a very weird, complex name with those R's and those N's, which Ian Marter actually changed. I think he added an extra N for the Target novelization. But yeah, so the cast does their best with the Weirin. I really like Wendy Williams, who played Vira. She really sort of sells that character's arc.
She's the best of the lot.
Yeah. I mean, she starts off very cold, and then at the end, she's like, chuckling and popping down jelly babies. Yeah,
I would say I never got around to my other sort of criticisms of why this is inferior to Alien, but one of them I think is the guest cast, right? Like if you think about Alien and how fleshed out and good the supporting cast is, and they obviously got top-notch actors to play all those folks. So, points to Alien and Ridley Scott and that whole project. Here, like there's a couple of other guys and they're kind of there, and I think they all get sort of killed at some point, either by Noah or there's the whole rocket thing at the end, and the guy sort of doesn't let the doctor do the noble thing, and he jumps on the sword to destroy the Weirin. But they're all like, okay, yeah, I guess that guy. And they all have the same outfit, which again, I get why. It's this future place, and they all have, I guess medical scrubs or whatever they're wearing. But they're all kind of just there, and so you don't have this good guest cast with real sort of clear roles or motivations, or there's just nothing interesting about this society, this quasi-utopian society that apparently humanity's evolved into. Now,
right, we don't get more details.
Yeah, and I kind of like that it's a bit utopian. I like that it's kind of a positive, generally positive vision of the future, at least of people, even though like the planet's been incinerated. But it seems like humanity's gotten its shit together at some point and has become like a pretty competent race of explorers. So that's good. Definitely a little bit Star Trek-y in that sense, and maybe there's a little bit of Star Trek influence happening here because this is like mid 70s, and Star Trek's getting really hot in reruns at this point.
Except we were a bit too colonizer-ish when we went to Andromeda, and hence the whole Weirin problem.
Yeah, well, this is like, they never really explain this. I don't think they have to, but it is like they went to Andromeda, which I assume means the galaxy. So that's pretty far. And that sort of tracks with this supposed time frame, which is more than 10,000 years, probably like it's the year, 15,000 or something. And so that's fine. But I feel like, I guess there's two ways about this. Like they apparently hunted and killed the Weirin. That's what the Weirin say. And it seems like humans encountered the Weirin, discovered how dangerous they are, and decided to exterminate them. Which I might even say, like, rightly, because the Weirin seem really dangerous. Like they seem like these are
kind of
very
evil.
bad creatures.
kind of evil. They want they want all that human knowledge. You can definitely imagine. I mean, the Doctor says kill them all before they reach their final stage. Basically, he's the Doctor basically becomes an exterminator specialist here.
He'd make a good Dalek, I hear.
Yes, that is true. But yeah, it's also basically he is turning Nerva Station into a roach motel. We're in check-in, but they don't check out. That's his whole idea there. How
did you like the ending? So they lure the Wirren into the transport pod, and then they all come in, and then somehow everybody gets out. And the Mirren don't notice, or they're still there looking for them. Then they launch it, and they can only launch it manually, so that guy has to kill himself. And then it goes out, and then it essentially self-destructs.
The Doctor wanted to sacrifice himself, and the other guy comes along with a union joke, which tells you that we're in the middle of the 70s here. Sorry, the Space Technicians Union is going to disagree with you on that one, Doctor. I'm going to have to knock you out. Yes. Here we see the muscular side of 70s strikes. The guy knocking the Doctor out in the chin.
To me, here's another reason why Alien is superior. Both Alien and Aliens understand like the explosion, the seeming end is not a great climax because it's not visceral. You don't have like a real good character moment there. It just sort of happens. So I found that to be really anticlimactic here. And I think if I would revise if I were to revise the script, the first thing I would do is like, there's got to be some final thing where there's a Wirren somewhere, or someone got infected, and they have some final visceral conflict with it.
I think the final communication from Noah might have had more impact if we had more of a sense that Noah and Vara were a thing. If we had more sense of his character, like you would almost take care of that need for something else.
Yeah.
I sort of almost like didn't care about the Wirren by that stage, and I was much more focused on the fact that right at the end, the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry all basically change into their clothes from the start of the Sontaran experiment, which was filmed first, which seems to be a thing in season 12. We've talked about this in Genesis of the Daleks, is that they Sarah finds clothes in a locker, and the clothes that she has to be wearing in Revenge of the Cybermen, and it's just, but like they're really the costume continuity person is really on it in this series. They're like, hey, let's very consciously, all get dressed in the clothes for fetch the Doctor's coat. And but speaking of clothes, and this may be where we get into matter transporters, the whole issue with matter transporters.
Oh yeah,
Sarah gets some new clothes. I thought you might be right on that, Pete, since you were so concerned about the Doctor regenerating at the end of Power of the Doctor into new clothes. Like Sarah gets basically transmatted into new clothes here.
Yeah, that's weird.
It is, yeah. And I mean, the whole use of transporters now, I don't think has aged well.
Right.
I feel like matter transporters, like we all basically know now what the problem is with them.
Yeah.
Which is that they basically kill you at one end and reconstitute a clone of you at the other.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you've got that technology, then why not just do that for everyone on Earth? But like time delay it until after the solar flares.
Yeah, or exactly. Or you could just recreate everyone just with beaming them. I mean, putting that aside, I feel like the thing with that Sarah getting not just put in the clothes, but put in the pod and put in what they call either cryogenic freeze or suspended animation. It does feel a little bit like, oh yes, of course we got to get her out, but it is a bit of a psych, right? Like, because they mention like, oh, she's going to be in there for 3,000 years or something like that. I think what you would do today in New Who would be to actually do that. Like in other words, like she's going to be here for 3,000 years. Well, let's pop forward 3,000 years.
Yep.
Come on, Harry, let's go to the TARDIS, and they do it, and then you'd write it in such a way that the Wirren thing happens in that gap.
Yes.
And you just do even more with the timey-wiminess of this and when things happened.
It could almost be a girl who waited kind of scenario.
Yeah, because otherwise it's a bit of a cop-out, right? You're just kind of like, oh, she's got to be in here. And honestly, I bought it in the sense of like, I bought that she would have to be in there because as anyone knows who's either frozen or unfrozen food back and forth a few times, it kind of wears out. It kind of doesn't taste the same anymore. And I feel like if you were to realistically depict some kind of cryogenic thing, you couldn't just keep freezing and unfreezing people without some serious effects. I just that just feels real to me, and it's not really adhered to here.
Yeah, it's actually in Liz Sladen's contract. You can only reheat her once. So that's your lot. No, I really, oh God, I was writing by this episode how much I love Liz Sladen and always will. Like Sarah Jane will always have my heart.
Yeah.
But I also loved Harry more than ever in this. Like there's been a lot of companions who sort of fill up the blundering doof, the blundering oaf kind of role that he's doing here. But he does it so well, and it's just because he's kind of upper class and clueless. I love that his first response to traveling in the TARDIS is to talk about hundreds of bobbies hiding inside it. You should sell this because the police would want it because you could have hundreds of bobbies hiding inside it in Trafalgar Square. Like, first of all, why?
Right.
Why Trafalgar Square? And, Sarah rightly does sort of criticize Harry for, stop burbling. But also, there's sort of a nice anticipation now, since we've been to Black Orchid, of like, we know that the Doctor only does provide a taxi service to policemen.
That's true.
And so maybe hundreds of bobbies hiding inside it isn't such a bad idea. But yeah, Harry has some wonderful, wonderful things going on here. His whole, it hasn't aged well to sort of say, get Sarah a drop of brandy. And the Doctor's like, there's brandy in the TARDIS, and that's,
Well, at least it tracks, right? At least they're being consistent about the brandy. And they, famously went back around on that in Twice Upon a Time.
Twice Upon a Time, yes. It really does anticipate that. And the Doctor's sort of neutral about his medicinal quality, but Sarah, to her credit, is like, I hate brandy. And Harry's like, oh, Doctor, can't you persuade her to take a drop? Really, Harry?
Yeah. So I guess the flip side of the guest cast not being so great and rather ill-treated is that you're right. Like the regular cast has a really good episode, and it gets this TARDIS trio gelling. I gotta say, I think Sarah, despite her getting into trouble early on, it gets better for Sarah as it goes on. And the thing I remember most when I was watching this the first time as a kid was her volunteering to go into the conduits, like showing that bravery. Like, you know what, I'm going to do it. As much as it's going to be a tight squeeze, like someone's got to do it, and we got to get these Weirin guys. So I'm in. So that was very memorable. Yeah. And she also has a really, really good line about the Doctor, where she mentions he talks to himself a lot because he's the only one who knows what he's talking about, which is like, nailed it.
That has got to go in the all-time great lines of, what the companions say, just, alongside Martha in Blink saying, trust me, just nod when he stops for breath. Wonderful, wonderful stuff like that. Also have to give props to Harry for basically going through the entire adventure shoeless.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I caught that, where he's climbing into the matter transmitter and it's just in his socks there. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, that's another indicator. It's a very clean station, right? You could just do that.
Yeah. I mean, he has to have both of his shoes thrown at this automatic, thing that's blasting him and the Doctor, which is another wonderful scene.
Well, like his shoes get blown up, the Doctor's scarf and his hat get zapped. Yet they're completely fine. Like he talks about how like, oh, it's a pity about the scarf because it was made for me by Madame Nostradamus. And it's like, the scarf's fine. You're still wearing it. It looks like there's not even like a scorch mark on it.
It is weird. It is a candidate for one of the best lines of Classic Who, though, that Madame Nostradamus was a witty little knitter. It's just like so much of this seems so tailor-made for Tom Baker.
Right.
I mean, it is extraordinary, and I think you see it almost, especially coming here in random order, right? That this is like, you have to kind of really keep reminding yourself that he is really new in the role here. This is the third one that he's filmed, the second one to air.
That sounds right.
Yeah, Robots, Sontaran Experiment, and then this. But he's already nailed his Doctor, and he's taking it to places that no previous Doctor has done.
Well, even that bit where the Weirin, he's attaching his mind to the Weirin's eye thingy so he can sort of see the last few moments of the Queen's life. And he plays that really well. Like, one, getting across the risk that he's taking. But two, when he comes out of it, he's just so confused. And he's like, there's the Weirin larva that's coming at them. And he's about to like go, hi, like shake hands with it or something. And it's like, no, wait, no, you're not a Weirin. No, don't do that. So I like that he kind of would go there and then, potentially risk how the character might be perceived, but like get it in these weird places and really get across the feeling of peril. Very smart choices.
I gotta wonder, were there a lot of people going, oh, hashtag not my Doctor, like, which is sort of a phase we go through with every new Doctor. Like, oh, he's no John Pertwee. Like, on a performance like this, you're like, he's no John Pertwee, and that's a good thing.
Right.
Like, he's just so, like, the mad, starry eyes are there. The scene that you just mentioned, he has that great line about how fond he's grown of the human race.
Right.
The whole of the Ark in Space is almost kind of a love letter from the Doctor to the human race.
He does a lot of toothy grins as well.
A lot of toothy grins. But of course, we've got to mention that speech, the Homo sapiens speech. What an inventive, invincible species. I love that line. I feel like that line, if there's one monologue that every actor auditioning for the role of the Doctor should do, it's this one. I mean, it feels like it's a template for a speech that has been given in New Who many times. And I was because I did go and look at the script after I watched the story this time, and I was like, you could imagine this in the voice of every New Who Doctor. You can kind of hear Homo sapiens, what an inventive, invincible species, you hear it as Tennant-ish or Matt Smith-ish or Homo sapiens Rose, Eccleston-ish. It's so like, a lot of bits of dialogue here just are immortal. And
well, this is really, I think, formative to some extent of the Doctor's character. It's like we think of these things like in the War Games that establishes backstory as kind of like the moments that define the Doctor. But no, like what you just identified, I think it's moments like that where it's a kind of a speech that he gives and really nails how he regards humanity and, his relationship with humans. And I think if I had thought about it, I think every Doctor has had some moment, certainly in New Who, that's very similar. As we were just talking there, I was reminded of the David Tennant episode, The Impossible Planet, where he expresses that similar admiration for this group of explorers who just decided to park themselves around a black hole because they can. Yeah. And it's very similar. Like, I'm just going to hug you because that's really cool. That's what humans do. And, again, it gives that in-show justification, of course, for his sort of obsession with Earth. But, beyond that, I mean, it's just sort of what the show takes as arguably its sort of optimistic, positive view of humanity and how it goes into the future. Obviously, you can play with that and invert it too. I mean, there's certainly been cynical episodes about certain things humans have done, etc. But I would regard this as like one of the definitive moments in the the Doctor's character.
Yeah. We had the two episodes ago we had the moment where the Doctor introduces himself to Charles Dickens as his biggest fan.
Oh yeah,
the Doctor is humanity's biggest fan. I think he's like the Doctor is a superhuman nerd. Like he's probably going to cons on Gallifrey, like cosplaying as human.
Superhuman nerd. Yeah, see what you did there.
There we go. But it's almost like every regeneration has to rediscover his love for humanity, and like he always seems to be rediscovering it when he gives that speech. Like he never gets tired of what we can do. It's and this may be the best example in the entire show.
Yeah, well, I would say definitely answers that question of what's the best moment for the Doctor and humanity and his admiration. But there are some other questions that we have to attack, and those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question. Why did the randomizer take us here?
All right. Well,
I got this one. I got this one.
Go for it.
Tom Baker says, don't panic in both this episode and the Pirate Planet.
Yes, he does. And
Boom.
As we
Mic drop. Hold on. Mic drop. Let me... I have to unscrew it. No, I'm not doing that.
We'll fix it in post. Yeah, it is interesting coming here straight from the Pirate Planet, straight from Douglas Adams, because as I mentioned last week, Douglas Adams sent his Doctor Who spec script and the very first episode of Hitchhikers as an example of look what I can do to Bob Holmes. And Bob Holmes was so impressed, he commissioned the Pirate Planet. So that's how that happened. Now here we have Bob Holmes as sort of the other end of his tenure, and he is. You can see why he would have had such admiration for Douglas Adams.
Right.
Because Douglas Adams can do things that Bob Holmes is sort of trying to do, but like he's just a bit too much of a slightly schlocky sci-fi writer. I know I'm sort of committing heresy by even saying that for a lot of
a little bit.
Whom Bob Holmes can do no wrong.
Well, if you're a Bob Holmes fan, go and listen to our podcast on the Carnival of Monsters.
Love Carnival of Monsters. And that is proof that like Bob Holmes was actually quite a comedic writer. And so he definitely recognized that in Adams, right? So there's some sort of symbiosis, one might say, to use a word from this episode, between the two of them. Perhaps Douglas Adams came along and implanted his lava in Bob Holmes. Yeah. Let me excuse me.
While he was sleeping, kind of weird imagery going on here.
Not sure I'm going with that. But also, as I mentioned at the end of last week's stories, like I was thinking about the Golga Frinchen B arc from Hitchhikers. It's in the TV show. It's in the book. Google it. But the B arc is very much like the arc in space, was probably influenced by it. You've got to say, Douglas Adams was equally influenced by Bob Holmes as much as Holmes admired Adams. So it seems appropriate that the randomizer would take us here to the most, I guess, the most Adams-esque Tom Baker story that he did.
Arguably.
Yeah. There's also the John Lucarotti involvement, obviously, with, connecting us to Marco Polo. The fact that the Doctor talks about hating stun guns. Connects us to our whole conversation last week on Romana and the stun gun, or was it a stun gun, that whole thing. Well,
there's also a moment here where one of the, I guess he's a med tech, which might explain why he doesn't have the courage to shoot Noah. But there's a moment where he's got a gun on him, and Noah's just like, you're not going to shoot, grabs the gun out of his hand, turns it around and shoots the guy. And I'm a little bit like Grace and I kind of looked at each other at that. Said, why didn't he shoot him? What's going on? And I think it's because we're so used to stun settings on things. And because the only thing I can think of in my head is, maybe there's just no stun setting, which kind of stretches credulity that the human race hasn't developed non-lethal settings for their guns at this point in the future, but that's the only way that scene works. But anyway, so I had one more connection. So do you remember in the War Games?
I do.
Where we've been to recently, he uses that sonic screwdriver as a screwdriver, and I think we might have even declared at the time we had got sonic screwdriver as screwdriver bingo. We had not, because in episode 1 of the Ark in Space, he unscrews the table that they're hiding under from the floor with the sonic.
Yep, still got it. The sonic still got it. So we don't have a bingo. Maybe there are more lurking out there. I tell you what, we do have bingo on there. I'm pretty confident on this one. The yo-yo being used as a measure of gravity. Which is also kill the moon. I don't know. Do you know of any other time when the Doctor uses a yo-yo?
I feel like Davison did it once. I don't know when. I could be making up a memory based on that, but I do feel like there's probably a Davison moment. So I don't think we've got yo-yo bingo.
Yeah. Okay. So potential, but certainly Yo-Yo and Bennett oscillator, which is used in Ark in Space as a reference to the director, but also mentioned in Kill the Moon, probably because Moffat inserted it because he's such a Ark in Space fan. But yeah, Nerva Station bingo, solar flare diaspora bingo. Like we're racking them up now.
Yep. Collect your bingo cards at the next meetup, guys. But in the meantime, we have to move on to the second question, which, of course, is what if the evil plot had succeeded?
So, if the evil plot succeeds, then the Wyrn takes over all the human bodies on Nerva Station. Yes.
Yeah. So they take over the humans of the Ark, and they mention that they're going to colonize the Earth. And then essentially use it as a base of operations because they'll have all of humanity's knowledge, but they can spend, I forget exactly what it's some ungodly amount of time in space without breathing again. So they talk about they could be out for hundreds of years or something and then get some oxygen somewhere. So
yeah. I will say, by the way, one more reason why I think the randomizer brought us here. Randomizer does seem to like these episodes where there's a lot of sort of sciencey stuff kind of buried within the story, like buried pretty well. Like you learn a lot about insects here. You learn about carbon dioxide and oxygen. They have these weird lungs that can have basically a closed loop system between the two. So yeah, it's not bad from a sciencey perspective.
You learn about roughly how long it takes for a planet to recover from solar flares, but I'm sure they're just making that up. But I mean, 10,000 years sounds about right. So yeah, there's definitely tons of sciencey stuff going on. Okay, so back to the evil plot. So they've colonized the Earth, and here's the thing where I don't really fully get the stakes here, because the Doctor does mention a couple times the future of the entire human race is at stake. So is that to imply the people on board the Ark are the only humans left? Because that doesn't work. They've clearly spread throughout the galaxy. They've spread to other galaxies if they've gone to Andromeda. How could this possibly be the last of the humans? Of course, even getting into that zone, you start to question, well, why did they need to do an Ark in the first place? Couldn't they just go to some other colony and hang out there? Like, why are we even using cryogenics this far in the future when it's been very clear from Doctor Who history that humans just have colonies everywhere and interstellar travel, and it's not a problem? So I think you kind of need to put some blinders on to the rest of Doctor Who future history for this to work at all. And because it feels like it wants to have those stakes. It wants these people to be the last humans, and if the Wyrn take them over, we're all dead. But it's you really have to like see this story in isolation to do that.
I do wonder, by the way, as you're saying this, it does give me more of a sense that maybe this is why Douglas Adams had the whole concept of the Golga Fringe B arc, because the idea of the B arc is it's the useless third of society. It's the middle managers,
right? Yeah,
the telephone sanitation experts. It's all these people with just really dumb bullshit jobs, and they've all been told that they're going out first because they're the ones who've got to save the race, right? That's why we're sending you first. And of course, it's just the rest of society getting rid of them until they contract a disease from a dirty telephone. But
so you think there's a sequel to Ark in Space where they basically I
think maybe this is I think maybe Noah may actually be a telephone sanitation operator or a middle manager or something who just like has ideas above his station. They've all just been told, oh yeah, there's a solar flare coming, like we all need to get you guys out. Off you go. We'll record some, quotes from the High Minister to play them at appropriate intervals in case they start getting wise. But yeah, so if the evil plot succeeds, let's say that we're in takeover Earth. Well, I think again this gets us back to matter transporters, and
right.
Do transmats have the ability? Do they have a memory of like the last several thousand people that they transmitted? In which case they could just transmit them again.
Right.
And why wouldn't you have a larger memory? So basically, what happens is, the humans get beamed back to Earth anyway, and then we have many, many years of human versus bug fighting. Basically, it becomes like Starship Troopers.
Oh, wow. That's not bad. I kind of like that. I was just thinking the Weirin takeover, they create their own galactic empire, essentially, with Earth as the base. And they eventually colonize the entire galaxy, maybe even further. So
I think we have to get a sense of how fast the Weirin can travel, and are they using wormholes, or are they limited by the speed of light?
Wormholes. Boom. I mean, they're bugs. Yeah, no, totally. It's just one of those things where, again, the confused stakes kind of make you think, well, wouldn't they just encounter other human colonies? Also, why haven't they taken over already? Like their innate abilities to absorb knowledge through their parasitism and being able to travel in space. They're relatively immune to most weapons except for electricity, apparently. Why why haven't they just taken over? And why aren't they super knowledgeable already by taking over some other race? So, it's kind of like this weird thing. Yeah. Like you almost think this is, and they mention their origin in Andromeda, but it'd almost be a better way that a better origin would be their like a mutated version of an Earth bug that has only just begun. It's a brand new species, and is threatening to essentially take over everything. Sort of similar, like they did this similar thing in the mutant phase. It's one of the early Big Finish audios where these bugs end up infecting Daleks, and then it turns into this mega super terrifying race, and they have to sort of go back in time and prevent that from happening. So
my read on it was that we'd radicalized the Weirin by invading their home on Andromeda, and they were peaceful before that, but now they're like, well, screw you guys. Clearly we need to be, more aggressive than thou. So, we're going to steal all your knowledge.
Well, they already got big teeth. Must have been using that for something. All right. Either way, it looks pretty bad for humans and others in the galaxy.
I think we can quash some bugs. I think we get Neil Patrick Harris, holding his hand to a Weirin forehead and going, "It's afraid! It's afraid!"
I love it.
Starship Troopers reference there. Also, Neil Patrick Harris returning to our screens in Doctor Who this fall.
In that role, I think that's exactly what he's going to be doing. But
not the Celestial Toymaker after all.
Someone else is doing something here in the Ark in Space, or around the events of the Ark in Space, and that is, of course, Clara Oswald. We have to find her. We have to find her here. Where is the Clara Splinter? Okay. So
the time at the end of the Name of the Doctor is in every adventure in the background somewhere, and we have to find her.
That's right.
Yes.
And
did that one from memory. Yes.
She's here somewhere, or she's not here somewhere, because there's not many opportunities for her to be somewhere here.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, I forgot to we forgot to mention this, that the fact that it's just a three-hander, that opening episode, the second episode of this of the Ark in Space was a record setter. It was one of the most watched Doctor Who episodes ever. With something.
Oh, she's in the audience.
Yeah, she's back on Earth, telling everyone to watch it. No. What I was going to say from that was, I really wish that the BBC had sort of taken from that people really like the three-hander of episode one, and maybe we just need more episodes with just the Doctor and the companions. So, yeah, maybe Clara is making sure that the other humans on Nerva Station don't wake up too fast, so that we've got a lot of opportunity to spend time with this TARDIS crew. Or maybe she is actually, first of all, Madame Nostradamus, who knitted the scarf in the first place, and she's there on the station knitting it back together and fixing the hole in the Doctor's hat.
Oh, okay. So she's just there off screen doing some knitting. Yes. Not bad.
She's being a witty little knitter. That sounds like Clara.
So I had a couple of things, because there's not really opportunity for her to be here, other than maybe one of the nameless, faceless people in the pods, which is kind of boring. I got a little meta with it. And so I think she's doing one of two things. she's either designing conduits on space stations like Nerva so that they're exactly Doctor Who companion sized. And she would know, right? She would know, okay, this is about that wide. So,
oh yeah, I mean, given that she is pretty much the same size as Sarah Jane, maybe she's responsible for the Sarah Jane clothes.
Oh yeah, that could be it too. But the other thing I thought of was that in the time where the people are from, the Nerva people are from, when they're sent out on their arc, she is sort of a PR handler for the government. And is all like, okay, you know what people really like? Melodrama. Just sound like really like everything you're saying is like the absolute most important things ever. Really stretch it out and just pretend you're like in a Shakespearean play from the 1950s or 60s, and you just got no nuance. It's all like full on melodrama.
Loud,
just do that.
Plummy accents. Yes, don't say jokes, say amusement.
Because man, when that prime minister comes on and she's all like, "You are the most important people doing the most important thing, and all of our hearts are coming." Like it's just like, oh my god, this is the most inauthentic, most non-human sounding speech that I think has ever been put to air anytime.
Yes. But speaking of which, while this show was on the air, that's when Margaret Thatcher became leader of the Conservative Party.
How about that?
Leadership contest. And speaking of, non-convincing speech, and
can you imagine a member of the fair sex being top of the totem pole, Chris?
Yes. Good for you, Sarah? But, of course, Sarah already knows it because she's from 1980 when Margaret Thatcher is actually Prime Minister.
Hey. There's already enough dating controversies going on here, all right?
Yeah, maybe. Well, you know what? Maybe Clara is that High Minister because the voice does come in at an opportune moment, right, in episode 3, where I forget exactly what it's interrupting, but like it's not good for our TARDIS team. And basically that's the resolution of the cliffhanger is that the voice interrupts. So maybe Clara Oswald is the High Minister of the future.
Hey, that's good. You've done all right, Clara.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Good on you, Clara. Not bad for a member of the Farrah sex, eh?
Yeah, I'm glad we can imagine it here in 2023. So, catch up, Harry. All right, folks, there is only one more question, but it is the ultimate question. The only question that matters for the arc in space. What did we think of this story? The Pull to Open rating system has 5 ratings. There is, of course, the Dalek, which we give to a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, which we give to a not-so-good episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which is a not-so-great episode, but hey, at least we learned something. At least it tried something. The Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. And the Rarely Used Fixed Point in Time, which is an episode that exists outside the rating system. We can't rate it for sometimes reasons of nostalgia, but also other reasons.
I sort of feel like a lot of people, a lot of old school fans might rate this Fixed Point in Time. Because it's like it was so famous for so long, and then I think kind of it sort of started to lose its sort of horror appeal as time went on. The effects looked worse and worse. I mean, it's kind of. I went into this knowing that I feel like a lot of people are just going to automatically say banger. Like it's if you're a really old school fan, you just sort of have this like RTG and Moffat, like they would both say banger.
Yeah,
right?
No doubt.
Yeah, and I don't think it is. I think that perhaps in concept it is again like the Pirate Planet. We said banger in concept, Dalek in execution, or at least I said that. And this one, like, it would be hard to give that one a Dalek and this one a banger, right? It's it's got some great lines in there. It's a really good TARDIS team. It is easily one of the best. and Baker just comes in and is the Doctor. Like it's a banger of a performance from Tom Baker. Definitely, like really secures him in the role in everyone's mind, and everyone's like John Who at this point. And but yeah, I gotta say there's no way I can rate this a Viscount banger. I think it's just a straight up Dalek. It's a template for Hinchcliffe. It's a template for a lot of New Who. It's very important in Doctor Who history. Like it's a big old shiny Dalek, maybe even be an Emperor Dalek, but I think it is not a banger. How about you, Pete?
I mean, I'll go even further than you and say this episode's overrated. Sorry, RTD. Sorry, Moffat. I kind of don't get it. Like, I do and I don't. Like, I think there's a lot of good concept stuff going on here. I can see, like, how the Wirren kind of, like, perhaps literally and figuratively get in your head. And there's some good attempts at body horror here, but there's just this kind of wooden guest cast. There's a lot of concepts that, or things they tried anyway, that just seem like they didn't know it. It could have been easily fixed, like the clean sets and the fact that no one sees the slime, the fact that they overuse the Wirren and it's just too well lit and it's just not that scary. So
he doesn't even step in the slime in his socks.
Yeah. So there's issues. I'm sorry, there's issues. Yeah. So it's like it's a Dalek. It's a good episode of Doctor Who. It's solid and there's good dialogue and it holds your attention, but it isn't. You're not. At no point was I like, oh wow, And I would say this like even the first time I saw it, like, oh, okay, that was a good episode. Let's see what happens next. But it's not a thing I really queue up in we either videotape or DVD or now Blu-ray all that often, right? Like it's like when it comes up on for whatever reason I'd check it out, but it's not a thing I seek out that much. So I'm giving it a Dalek, and it's kind of a Dalek that it talks a good game, but it screams exterminate a lot, but it doesn't really use that gun.
And we scream explain back.
Yeah.
Explain the word, explain. It is. You know what? I think what we're seeing here is an advantage. It's going to sound self-serving, but I think it's also true. Great advantage of doing the stories in random order is that we can see that the arc in space is a little bit overrated. Because I think if you're watching the whole show in chronological order when it was broadcast, then you will have, at this point, you've just gone through the whole Pertwee era.
Right.
You're like, oh, thank God, a story that's got nothing to do with Unit, a story that's got nothing to do with the Master. Like they're finally, it's a great TARDIS team. They're off Earth. It's the beginning of the Hinchcliffe era. Like you're so excited for all these reasons that it's different.
Yeah.
It's new. It's exciting. It feels a bit more they're trying something new. And if you've just slogged through the entire Pertwee era, like it's going to seem a lot more than it is.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, we are coming in here with none of that prejudice. We're just coming from the ether, right? We're just jumping in from the future, from the pirate planet.
No, it's a good point to make. And if you think about even the scale of what they were doing here, going 10,000 years or more into the future, which Doctor Who rarely did that, right? Like they were, more concerned with the sort of not quite immediate future, but the next, it's usually between the 20th century and the 30th century is where most stuff happens in Doctor Who sort of future history. And here they're like, hey, what if we up that and just, had this massive scale and time, and even think about raise the stakes to the whole future of the human race, and we can do this. All fresh idea, not new ideas then, but fresh for Doctor Who, and not mined as much as they are now, not just in Doctor Who, but in every other franchise. And so we're just immune to it. We're like, oh, okay, that's cool. You can do that, but I'm not going to give you as many points now just for doing that. You got to earn it, and it does. Like it does. It doesn't do a bad job. It's just I'm not going to give you extra points just for the scale,
right? And we've seen better Hinchcliffes than this, so we've been to Genesis already. We've seen Talons. we've seen a lot of his good stuff. So this definitely would have to reach a higher bar to be like, oh wow, this is blowing us away. So yeah, perhaps a controversial take for old school fans, but that's why we're here. I would not in good conscience want to tell new Who fans that this is a banger, that you absolutely must see it. I think it can be a little bit of a struggle for a modern audience.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, we're going to leave our Daleks here on Nerva and pack up our TARDIS and figure out where we are going next as we flee the arc in space. And of course, I am alluding to activating the randomizer.
That's right. We puny, defenseless bipeds are going to step back into our TARDIS, or maybe we'll transmat this time on the randomizer to our next location. However, the randomizer is composed of two components. The first, Pete is at the controls of, and that is the codex, that is the complete listing of all 302 stories, by our reckoning, of televised Doctor Who. And Pete, how many of those have we not done?
Well, now that I have filled in the arc in space with its official pull to open episode number, we now have 216 Doctor Who stories yet to do. My goodness, 216. Wow. So what happens is we plug the numbers 1 and the numbers 216 into the Executor, which is played by random.org, which, instead of using algorithmic pseudo-randomness, which is just a computer guessing at a random number, random.org uses atmospheric noise. So it looks at how many Wirren are bouncing around in the atmosphere. And if an atom bounces off a Wirren, then it's, I guess that tells us where we go next in Doctor Who history. Quite an amazing thing. So before we hit that button, the random generate button, we do like to give the randomizer some challenges, and as regular listeners know, Pete's challenges are cursed because of the whole curse of the black spot debacle. So Pete, what you got? Well, I'm tempted to ask for more bugs. Because bugs creep me out, and I don't want to go to bugs.
When are we going to get a bug bingo? That's because we've got the Green Death. Maybe we've got a bad bug bingo. We've got the Tractators. Yeah, but I guess bad bugs.
I guess I'm sort of keying in on the vision of future humanity, which is a bit utopian here and a bit Star Trek-y. I would love to see a vision of human. It doesn't have to be the future, but let's get some cynicism into it. Let's see sort of a dark side of humanity, or a uglier side of humanity in whatever we're going to. I wouldn't mind that. Yeah. Let's get something a little bit challenging.
Well, I'm going to say, so that the randomizer is clearly trying to get at my statement the other week that I thought that the Dr. Jamie and Zoe were, the best 3-person TARDIS team ever. And I was like, well, maybe the Doctor, Rory and Amy, that's a good one. You've now proven that, yes, the Doctor, Ian and Sarah, the Doctor, Harry and Sarah, the Doctor, Ian, Marta and Sarah. For some reason,
too many Ians.
He decided to use his real name there. Were really, really solid TARDIS team. Love them. I gotta say, I probably love them as much as Troughton and Zoe and Jamie. So stick it to me again, randomizer. Take us to another 2-companion story that is up there and proves a whole other group of companions should be in this list when we're thinking about best TARDIS teams.
Nice. Yeah, surprise us with another top-notch TARDIS dynamic. Alrighty, we got our challenges. We got our tools at the ready. I'll give you a countdown for the Executor. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Where anything could happen.
47.
47. We're early. Ooh, we're at Frontier in Space.
Okay.
Interesting. Oh, you know what? The randomizer was hearing you badmouth Pertwee. It was just like, oh yeah, we're just coming off Pertwee. You're tired of being earthbound and all this stuff. And he's basically saying like, hey, you know what? He had a little bit of variety toward the end there. So try this on for size.
I love it. I've not seen this one.
Mm-hmm.
This is, it's Draconia. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ogrons is our first Ogron.
Yep.
Wow. I've not actually seen an Ogron episode. We've spent all this time on talking about Ogrons, never actually seen them in action. So
you know the rating. Now you're going to get to know the monster, but you're going to have to get to know it next week when we come back after we've seen this 6-episoder of the John Pertwee era, season 10. Guys, this has been Pull to Open. It is a podcast. Podcasts are great things to subscribe to if you can. If you haven't done that, if you're, say, encountering us on a web embed somewhere or just hopping by this YouTube video, hey, there's a subscribe button somewhere, wherever you found it. Go ahead and hit it. Go ahead and turn on notifications if you're in an app that allows for that. That would alert you whenever we have new content. Please follow us on socials. We are at Pull to Open on TikTok and Pull to Open 63 on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Spotify listeners, we just rated the Ark in Space. You get your voice, and hey, go ahead, tell us it's a banger. You can just rate it right there in the app if you think it is, or if you agree that we think it's just a double-barreled Dalek here. But have your say here in the Spotify app, and I'm sure our ratings will motivate at least one person who doesn't listen on Spotify to download Spotify and rate it on your Spotify app. So go ahead and do that. And of course, if you have a Doctor Who story title in the form of an emoji, go ahead and leave that on any of the places you can drop us a line that I just mentioned.
Yeah, good luck doing the Frontier in Space in emoji form. That'll be an interesting one.
Oh yeah, challenge accepted by someone.
All right, well, we will see you here next week for the very last Roger Delgado appearance in Doctor Who history. It'll be a fun one.
All right, guys, take care.